Yeah.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, a lot to do this fall as we get closer and closer to National Co-op Month. And but let's move over to our presentation today. I'm going to turn it over to Danny Cordova and take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Danny Cordova. I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I'm 27 years old, and like I stated before, I'm a worker, owner, and treasurer with CUPS Cooperative. That's the incorporated workers cooperative that's doing business as White Electric Coffee in Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm joined here with my colleague, Chloe Jessing. If you want to introduce yourself real quick, Chloe. Unless she's not there anymore and she can't hear me.
Hi, yep. Hi, I'm Chloe, here with Danny, fellow worker owner. Thanks, Danny.
Yeah, and Chloe, feel free to like interrupt me. Like I have like a very kind of somewhat detailed outline of just like everything that's happened in like the past year, which has been really kind of been like a blur, just like thinking about like everything that happened since last year with the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter protests, and here in Providence, Rhode Island, it's been like a lot, and there's like a lot of nitty-gritty details, which you probably know more than me. So feel free to like at any point just chime in and let people know if I'm wrong about something. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the business itself, White Electric Coffee. It's a cafe shop located in the west side of Providence. It's located across 3 high schools, which I'm one of alumni, Central High School, located, just right across the shop. Yeah, so it's kind of just like kind of crazy thinking about like, just like being in high school and just like, hey, like one day that shop across the street, not only are you going to work there, but you're also going to be like a co-owner there too. Which like, if you ever told me that, like while I was 10 there, I would just like, would not believe you pretty much. Yeah, like I said, it's been around since 2000 and it's been like a pretty favorite place for people grabbing espresso drinks, grabbing some bagels, some pastries. It's a very nice, chill atmosphere. We have a lot of indoor dining where you could just like, grab a laptop. You need to work on your essay for like a college class, and you could just like, just come in and just like sit down and just have a nice, relaxing time. And yeah, I've been working there since May of 2019. In September of 2020, the shop became unionized under CUPS, the Collaborative Union of Providence Service Workers, being the first coffee shop in the state of Rhode Island to do so. Following our unionization, the shop was listed for sale. And us workers kind of just banded together and decided to purchase the business and convert it into a worker cooperative. The closing of the deal happened of April of this year, and we've reopened as a workers cooperative since May of this year, and it's been a pretty exciting time. So I'm just gonna go to the beginning and then just like pretty much like lay all the great deeds that we had and like, kind of the journey that we had. So it kind of started last year with the pandemic. It obviously shook the food industry, just really changed a lot of people's lives, changed a lot of people's well-beings, caused a lot of uncertainty. and White Electric Coffee was no exception. We kind of made a lot of business with, like I said before, like we had 3 high schools located across the street from us, which, we had a lot of students, a lot of teachers wanting like whether it's a bagel or some lunch or a cup of coffee. And then suddenly, that just kind of went away. So there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of like, it seemed like a lot of like the whole society was just kind of like tearing itself apart. And then we kind of like realized, like, I guess like consciously, like, oh yeah, like without these people, without these service workers, keeping our food stocked, keep like bringing up our groceries. It seems like if those people are gone, it just seems like society kind of just like goes up in chaos. And yeah, and the food industry has been like pretty notoriously bad to its workers. Just having, it's very like it's just kind of pretty cruel. Like with the physical and emotional labor you're expected to go through, constantly supposed to be in a good mood, constantly making smiles, being told by your bosses like when to smile and to say this and to do this. And just kind of like having to be like kind of just like in this like very kind of like there's like pretty much like no really way to advance, no really way to change your workplace. There's no really like you pretty much like if it's like a very large corporation, you really don't really have much of a say on any input to the company. And yeah, when the shop closed down in March following the like widespread closings and just a lot of stay-at-home orders that took effect. And we closed down, we went on unemployment. So luckily, we all managed to get unemployment. And by the way, and for White Electric, it's one business. We're talking about like one shop. It's not a chain, and we're about like 15 staff members at a time. But we all managed to get on unemployment just fine. And the shop reopened in May for takeout only. And while the shop was reopening, that's when the Black Lives Matter protests following the George Floyd murder was really kind of taking the country by storm. And like inspired by the wide demand of racial and workplace justice due to those protests and like a general kind of fear of uncertainty about COVID. A few of our staff members, both current and former, decided to join together and write a letter of grievances to our owner, making a list of demands such as diverse hiring practices and the establishment of a hiring committee made by the workers, wheelchair accessibility, paid sick time, paid time off, living wage with regular pay raises, transparency with cafe finances, and the enrollment of implicit bias and racial sensitivity trainings, and also just kind of a broad kind of rejection of white supremacy in the community. And around 40 current and former staff members endorsed the letter by signing it off. So the letter was sent to the owners in June of last year, and I just remembered there being a lot of uncertainty on like whether the owners how like the owners would respond to the letter. Like again, we're very closely knit, so we wanted this letter to open up a dialogue, just like having a very internal dialogue to make some changes to the cafe. Unfortunately, in July, that's when the owners decided to close the cafe and laid off the employees who signed the letter and planned to reopen the shop later with new staff replacing the ones who signed the letter. We chose to launch an online petition demanding our jobs back and ensuring that our list of demands that we listed in the letter would be met. This petition raised over 400 signatures. Eventually, the owners relented and we got our jobs back. And as well as some of the things we demanded in the letter, such as a wheelchair ramp in front of our shop. We got some pay raises. The owners did hire a few staff members of color, and also the racial sensitivity trainings. So that was a great victory for us. But in order to protect ourselves from any further retaliation and making sure that we have lasting changes beyond these short-term concessions, we decided to either join or form a union. We opted to form an independent union, mainly because of our relative small size and that we didn't really believe that mainstream unions didn't really exactly line up with our political values. We also met with Mark Gursky, a former labor lawyer and also a White Electric customer, where we kind of drafted our bylaws that reflected the nature of what we were doing. We are all about no traditional hierarchical structures and made a big emphasis of collective decision-making process, which has been pretty much the nature of just working at White Electric. It was it was pretty much just like a workers co-op without being a worker co-op, with just like having, an owner. We always kind of just like form together and make like decisions on the day-to-day operations of running the shop, and just collaborating with ourselves, and just we kind of had like shift leads, but it was pretty much like a kind of like a title thing with like not really much of a difference besides like a regular barista. So we didn't want to keep a hierarchical, any kind of structure. And that's when the Collaborative Union of Providence Service Workers was formed, or CUPS for short. In late August, we requested for voluntary recognition of our union. The owners accepted, which was really great news. Following that process, we had a card check in which the staff expressed overwhelming support of the union, and thus the union has been officialized, and it became the first unionized coffee shop in Rhode Island to do so. And I remember that day, we also had like a cake. We planned to do this like big celebration where we're just like, yeah, we did this like really hard thing. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. It was very stressful. There was like a lot of uncertainty, but it felt like, all that hard work is paid off, and we could just, take a big rest and just take it easy. That was until later that night when we received an email from the owners pretty much stating that they were intend to sell the shop pretty much. And yeah, and that was just like a massive curveball. In fairness, he did offer to offer to sell it to us. Uh, uh, Later, the next day, we kind of just like got together, and then we kind of got together and just like decide what to do next. That's when like the idea of just forming a worker co-op just like kind of started floating around. We kind of have like a basic understanding of what a worker co-op is, like the main idea of workers collectively owning the workplace, and decision making would be planned out democratically. And we just kind of like, I guess, like we just kind of like just like sat there and just like envisioned like that would be great if that happens, like the changes we could do the shop just have like an actual like real kind of ownership to it. And yeah, like we just kind of like, and we just pretty much agreed that like a lot of us, like we were kind of really uncertain what to do, like how to even do it. We were complete novices like at everything, like even like forming the union, like, and we had just like no idea where to even begin. But we all just really liked the idea of just owning White Electric Coffee, that we just decided just like, yeah, let's just try to make this happen. And yeah, and that's when we kind of just started looking. And like I said before, we're complete novices, but we are well-connected novices, and meaning that we had plenty of resources. We knew some people that that had some expertise in co-op development. We knew someone who worked with, one of us knew someone who worked with the ICA group, an organization that's dedicated to co-op development. We worked with a realtor who had experience with consulting with co-ops. We met with some folks with the local enterprise assistance fund. We also met with folks over at Fortnight Wine Bar, which is a workers cooperative in Providence. Like we just kind of just talked to a bunch of people and just like, just trying to get like some form of help. A big co-op we have here in Providence is Urban Greens, which is also a co-op grocery store. And that's where we learned about the Cooperative Fund of New England. And that's where we met Maggie, and we've got that's our primary loan, which was approved in December. And there was also a grassroots fundraising campaign, which was very overwhelming experience, because like it was just like a lot of people just like actually expressing, like getting very excited with the idea of having a worker-owned cafe in Providence. And we've raised about $55,000. So there was also a great community angle to our rising up in our story. We just like, yeah, we can like, it was like a lot of people were really excited about this. We were incorporated as a workers cooperative in November of 2020 under Cups Cooperative Incorporated. We also created co-op bylaws, and in those bylaws we made an emphasis on consensus decision-making processes, doing regular meetings, and member patronage. Yeah, none of this was guaranteed. However, in January of 2021, the owners decided to sell the business to us. The secondary loan with the Fund for Jobs Worth Owning with the ICA group, that was pretty much just for the conversion of worker cooperatives, was approved. And then we did some more fundraising, and then the deal was closed, and we were giving on April of this year, and we were giving the keys to the shop. And in May, we officially reopened as White Electric Coffee as a workers cooperative. I'll just wrap it up there and let Maggie talk.
I was thinking, just because time is tight, that I am happy. I'm fine with presenting, and I can come to another meeting in the future if people are interested in learning more about what CFNE does and what to look for in a loan applicant, and that would give a little more time for questions and answers and discussion. Maddie, you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I think we can do that. If there are any questions, maybe get on the stack in the chat, and if someone has an immediate question, maybe just say it.
Well, I would like to invite the CUPS group, to participate in our case study program, to have a case study written up about, short case study, not an academic, treatise, but that would appear on our website with lessons learned and, the context that's useful to other unions and other efforts around the country. And so, what do you think?
I think it's for you, Danny, if you're willing to participate, or Chloe.
Yes, I will say yes on our behalf. Yes.
It would be great to get this written up.
Yeah.
I am curious, Maggie, how CFNE steps in, all of the ways of a bunch of workers coming together and then putting together, the proper documents, financials, legal, and all that. Maybe summarize what role you played.
Sure. So one of our main goals is to try to get an applicant as loan ready as possible. We lend across the 6 states of New England and New York State, although not in New York City. So we will do a lot of work with the co-op on their financials and making sure that they have a business plan in place. What was great about working with CUPS was that they were already organized as a group. And I think a lot of that came from the union organizing that they did. And also that they were really well connected. We look for applicants to be connected to sort of the co-op ecosystem locally or nationally. And CUPS was also really well hooked up in Providence, which means that they were able to get a lot of support through Urban Greens, through the Social Enterprise Greenhouse, from Matt and Worcester Roots and the US Federation. And then we connected them to somebody who came in specifically to help them with their financial projections. And so in the end, they had projections that we had confidence in. They had a business plan, and they had a committed group of owners. So those are all things that we look for. It's often, I have to say, a little bit of a harder slog with applicants to get all those things in place. And I think CUPS came pretty well set up to apply to us for a loan. And then the other thing that we do on an ongoing basis is stay in touch with our borrowers, so that ideally, if there are problems that come up, we're in a position to address those early on. We can amend a loan if we have to do that. We offered a lot of applicants last summer periods with deferred payments because everything got so haywire during the pandemic and shutdowns. Because what we want is to be more of a partner to our borrowers than a lender. We're not a bank. I say that to people all the time. We're a nonprofit, we're a loan fund, we're mission driven, and we want cooperatives to succeed. So So that's what we work towards. And if we do that in partnership with our borrowers, I think we're on a pretty good road to make that happen. I'll put my email in the chat so that if people want to ask me anything about this afterwards, they can do that.
That sounds great. Thank you. Are there any other questions or reflections on the presentation? We have a few more minutes. So, Chloe, if you wanted to add anything.
How hard was it to get the financials since the company was like, you can have it? Were they forthcoming, or did you have to like figure that out yourselves to understand the financial situation you were walking into?
I will just say it was hard. They did give us some information, but it was definitely challenging. There was a kind of, it was on one surface, it looks like, oh, they were offering to do this, but it was kind of a very adversarial relationship the entire time. So everything was a little bit difficult, but we had a lot of help from, there's so many, there's people on this call too, like Ariana Levinson and Maggie was such a great help, and Matt and Rebecca, you, and I don't know, but also the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center, Josh Daly, he helped look at our finances. So a lot of people helped. It was really, it's still like overwhelming thinking of how much help people gave us and how just like supportive people were and how fundamental that was to us getting to the finish line. But yeah, the finances, we did have some information. So that was definitely helpful. It enabled us to predict, to forecast that we would be able to do all right, from a business standpoint.
Yeah. We've also met a lot of our projections and goals too, which was also it's very great to see since we've reopened, the amount of support that we've received. It's been great.
Could I ask Chloe and Danny how you went about getting the business valued for the purchase? Who did you use, and how hard was it to find someone to do the valuation for the purchase? I realize that the financials, the pro formas and the projections are all part of that, but sometimes, can you just address that issue about the valuation?
Yeah, so we had we had one valuation done in the process of the loan application with CFNE. So Andy Danforth. Okay. Yep, as I think Maggie just, maybe that was a private message to me, but yes, Andy Danforth from, I guess he's associated with CDI in Maine, and maybe also has his own accounting business as well, but he was really helpful. And then the Small Business Development Center, they also did kind of an informal one. So we got it from a few different angles, but Andy was kind of the more formal one that I think really helped us not only get the loan, but of course for ourselves too. We didn't want to pour all this future money into business that we didn't think was going to be successful.
Well, and the other thing with White Electric is that they bought the business, but they also bought the condo in which the business is located. So there was not just a business valuation, there was a property valuation that had to be done.
I had a question. You mentioned in your presentation that you chose to do an independent union because you didn't feel that existing unions were a good fit for you. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
I can speak for myself. I think that, it wasn't necessarily, we're very pro-union. So that wasn't meant to be like a diss to unions. We're very pro-union. It was a few different things, partly because we were just one shop. So a lot of mainstream unions just sincerely aren't interested in organizing a little 15-person workplace. That's just the reality. And then also because we already had been organizing together and had, we'd been meeting several times a week, sometimes every day. We kind of already had this very established trust and decision-making process. And when we found out that creating our own union was an option, it just felt very natural to do, just to kind of continue basically with how we were already making decisions together and how we were already advocating for ourselves. And, so that was mainly that. It wasn't And everything happened so quickly too. So it wasn't like we really, I don't know if that answers your question.
Shelley's muted, but yeah. Are there any other last questions, or maybe take one more? Or great. Well, I want to thank Chloe and Danny and Maggie for showing up and sharing with us today. This is a really exciting story, and definitely kind of is a nice segue into our next topic, because one of the issues early this spring was, yes, let's all give a round of applause. Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the issues this spring was really about how conversions happening in workplaces that are unionized. And some of you may know that there's a very different experience in Ithaca, New York, with Gimme Coffee, and that led us as the Union Co-op Council to start really thinking about what co-op developers who may not always have a lot of experience around unions because of the prolonged attack on unionization in this country over the last 40 years, and that they need to learn about it. And so we issued a statement in the spring. I'm going to put it in the link for those that want to view it, about where we feel is how developers should be thinking about it. But we also wanted to continue that work and bring up a formal sort of principle for the U.S. Federation's membership to engage and vote on. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about here. We have a draft ready that'll go to the board and then eventually to the membership for the fall meeting to be approved by the membership. And I'm going to put that link as well. I can read it real quick, and then maybe getting some input and feedback from everyone in this meeting, and so that we can, the executive committee will be meeting afterwards to kind of finalize it, to get it off to the board of directors today. But so the idea is creating a principle of cooperative development in unionized workplaces. It arises out of the Union Co-op Council statement on developing worker co-ops in unionized workplaces issued in June 2021. As cooperatives, startups and conversions of existing businesses become more common, driven by the aging business owner population and economic effects of continuing COVID-19 pandemic, it's important that co-op developers broaden their approach to co-op development in a way that builds the labor movement inclusive of labor unions and worker cooperatives. To this end, we propose the following principle for US FWC members in the co-op development sector, which is to honor union representation, union organizing, and union power of the workplace that already exists. And in sectors where union organizing is ongoing, look to the sector-related organizing strategies by local unions and invite them in to see if a worker buyout can be used as an added tool for their genuine efforts for worker power and economic improvements. Seek not to undermine already ongoing unionization efforts. In order to implement this principle, we're recommending the following guidelines: that developers think broadly about industry-wide challenges with stakeholders, be proactive when engaging with unionized workplaces and cooperative development project. And this requires asking questions and limiting assumptions. Unions are not monolithic. Each union and even each local has its own culture and approach to organizing. Some locals are regional in nature, some sector specific, and others may be shop specific. Developers need to learn the ways in which different unions work with cooperatives. If there is a union contract in place, they're the next stop for any developer. This means contacting union organizers, shop stewards, and elected leadership of the local or organizing campaign. Co-op developers are not simply business brokers. They serve to develop cooperative solutions for the potential worker owners. Collective bargaining agents are the legal representatives of the workers and therefore must be involved in any legal representatives such as board of directors within the business would be in a conversion process. It's not enough to have a member of the union be involved. The union leadership needs to be on board. The campaign, union, or bargaining unit should be the body that selects the buyout committee. Part of preliminary research on conversion shops and when organizing the same sector or industry as ongoing union organizing campaigns should be the landscape of the labor movement in the sector, industry, and or union in the specific shop. And then some bullet points. This includes an assessment for conversion or startup needs to include the political economy of the market sector. Where are the power exploitation opportunity and fault lines for workers in that industry? What political struggles are on the front line? How do co-op developers relate to the advocacy and battles in this market? In many cases, unions put researchers and organizers in this space. Any feasibility study should include the market analysis for worker power and relevant fights for labor rights. When there is a union in the market, they should be approached for support on prevailing issues around wages and working conditions. And finally, not all business problems can be solved with reorganizing the ownership of the firm. Ask what worker issues exist and who is on the cutting edge of trying to influence the market for more economic justice. So that's our proposed statement. I'm going to open it up to any discussion. I got to get back to my screen now to do that. So if there is anyone that wants to jump in and comments, questions, and members of the executive committee who helped draft it, maybe if you want to add any comments.
I'll add some comments, only that, it's a lot of talk and words, but the sentiment is that when there's already workers organizing somewhere or a union representing organized workers, let's support that. Co-op developers often do it, and like what should do it one business at a time. They're looking at the business, but unions are looking at a sector, and they're looking at the dynamics in that sector, and they fight for policy to raise the floor. And $15 an hour is an example of a campaign that was not for one company. It was across the sector that unions led. So if we really start thinking about how developers who go in and are just looking at that business deal being like a business broker, what might they miss and where do they stumble? I mean, that was part of the attempt here. I'm maybe repeating much of what John was saying in our written words, but I wanted to give it some of that context of understanding that, like, we don't want to step on each other's toes when somebody says we're going to organize for worker power and they have blinders on to the fact that there's another entity looking at worker power in that sector or in that company. So we want to try to contribute to a conversation with cooperative developers, many of whom are either, some of whom are on this call, but also many of whom on this call work with co-op developers to help with changing and enhancing that dynamic to be supportive of unions and unionization and worker organizing more broadly.
I think it's also important to recognize that many people in the co-op movement, not just the worker co-op movement, but the broader co-op movement, including developers, are not familiar with unions. And many younger people, as those of us who have been lucky enough to be in unions, many younger people have not been that lucky. They have not had the good fortune to be part of a union and don't understand the importance of a union. They have a good start with understanding worker co-ops and being interested in worker co-ops, but part of the reason we're developing this policy is to be sure that people who are unfamiliar with unions can have a starting point when they're organizing unionized worker co-ops or worker co-ops that would like to be unionized.
Well, as a 30-year veteran of the organizing departments of the two largest unions in the country, I can tell you that there are entire firms dedicated to undermining union organizing campaigns and opposing them. And their strategy usually is just to come in about 3 weeks before the union election will happen and just confuse the issue enough that people decide to go with the status quo. And this works in politics as well, but for union organizing campaigns, they've spread disinformation. And I personally don't want to see worker cooperatives get used in that way. And so I want people to be very aware, and that's what we've dedicated our time to at the Union Co-op Council, about how unions work and operate, and to make sure that they check in with the unions in their local area and build a relationship, not just when they're approaching one particular workplace for a conversion or a startup, but generally build up relationships with unions in their area and where they're working, and understand what their struggles are, and understand the strategies used by anti-union. There's a lot of law firms and firms dedicated that are paid $200,000 for each staff person just to disrupt union organizing campaigns. And we've seen evidence that sometimes, a co-op that pops up that, hasn't checked in to find out what the landscape is of union organizing can also confuse the issue of the organizing campaign. And we just don't want to see the worker cooperative movement play into that kind of dynamic. Thank you.
All right. Wonderful. Yeah, I think there's some good stuff happening in the chat too, right? And then I would add, most historically co-op development has been in the ag and consumer co-op sectors, which, and it's really only recently that a lot of these more traditional co-op development organizations are starting to branch into worker co-op spaces because of the increasing demand. And again, as already mentioned, whether or not they have any experience with labor unions, or if they do, it's actually probably working with producer and consumer co-ops that are not always very union friendly. And so it's really about educating developers in this space, and many of them are members of the U.S. Federation, and so this would be giving them some very clear guidance and direction going forward.
Yeah. And I just want to answer, Elena asked a question in the chat, I'm only seeing it now, about what are co-op developers. So, it took me a while. This is actually, for those who use the term colloquially, like a lot of people don't know what that is. It took me a while to learn it. But we are familiar with something called business development, economic development, workforce development, and people who do that become the intermediaries to pursue that. So co-op developers are people who are intermediary helping co-ops develop. It's not at all like real estate development, but one who develops real estate does that. So just understand there is a whole network, and there is something called the Madison Principles that was established, John can say better how long ago, but in Madison, Wisconsin, where there is a center for co-ops, these co-op developers got together and set some principles for operation. And we want to influence and add to that principle this area of work that says, look out for you, as I was saying before, the other toes in the room. Let's not step on them when there's movement building afoot. So co-op developers, some people look at co-op developers as like, specialized business brokers, help to transfer ownership or set it up. But some are really like anti-poverty, working with BIPOC folks, figuring out how to do this. And there needs to be principles so that white supremacy doesn't reign, so capitalism doesn't reign supreme, and a dynamic that's fully inclusive gets cultivated. So co-op developers play this good role and also can be delicate.
Thank you for that. Yes, I appreciate the clarification.
And Matt or John may want to add to that as people who do, or Shelley, who do co-op development.
Yeah, I think it's, it's definitely a broad space of co-op development. I like the term co-op organizer myself. I kind of hate the term co-op developer because I think it does tend to sound like you're a business broker, whereas I think what we're really doing is organizing in the community. And we're trying to, again, like I mentioned, at least my perspective is, it's not just about changing ownership for the sake of changing to somehow make capitalism more palatable. It's really about changing the economy to a cooperative economy from a capitalist economy. At least that's where I come from, and where I think we should be thinking about. And co-ops privilege are supposed to center the human being and human dignity in the workplace. And I think that's a real core part of what we do as developers, or should be doing. So.
And I see John shared in the chat, the cooperation works principles, the 12 principles. Ariana, I wonder if you had something to add, being such an active player in this space for unionization and co-ops.
I think I could promise to read through it and then get some comments back to you, Rebecca. I'm not the best at just hearing and reading something quickly, unfortunately. Will that be okay?
Well, we're under a very tight timeline, and the executive council is going to stay on this call afterwards and talk about it and get this out, because of you. The federation has a deadline for tonight to take recommendations for their quarterly meeting. So we're sort of moving along. So it's the general concept. I think there's been a lot of wordsmithing put to task already.
No, I agree with the general concept, especially the way that you boiled it down was very helpful. And I can definitely skim through it, as soon as I hop off this call and send something to you.
Thanks.
John, you're muted. John, you're muted.
Thank you. Well, we have about 9 more minutes for this call. If it sounds like if conversation about this proposal is, kind of complete, or maybe people need more time to think about it, that's fine. I don't know if there are other things that people want to talk about, if there's any particular work that some of the task force or committees are doing that would like to be brought up, we can certainly talk about that. If there are conveners of those task force, I would like to urge people to join. Maybe they can give a pitch for their group.
Yes, I would very much like to let people know that there is a task force that is specifically for local labor union outreach. And so a lot of the outreach that has happened to the labor union environment has been to the national leaders, but it's not the national leaders that will end up doing this work. And so consequently, we have started a program to reach out to county feds and local labor unions in the country, and we're going to be producing a number of webinars that will be set in union terms and discuss the topics which are most relevant to unionists, and then we want to roll those out to the county feds across the country. So anybody that is associated with the Union Co-op Council that has any connection or can find any connection to your local labor unions and also to your local county federation of labor, which is the AFL-CIO branch, in your area, in your county, to do a presentation, and then get people on those staff members and organizers and elected leaders to look at these webinars and utilize the case studies we are also producing as another task force to help them acquire the skills necessary to do conversions or startups or participate in the growing worker cooperative sector. So please join us. Let us know if you'd like to be involved in any of those efforts. And then I think somebody should announce the conferences that are coming up. Can you please, who knows when the conferences are, the ones that we're doing proposals for workshops and whatnot? John, do you know the dates?
Yeah, we did it at the top, but maybe just reminding. So Maddie, do you want to just kind of do a quick rundown again on Federation events, and then?
Sure, yeah. So we've got the Worker Co-op Week is coming up from November 3rd to 5th. That's sort of the combination of our regional conferences, the Western Co-op Conference and the Eastern Conference for Workplace Democracy. That'll be virtual. We're currently open for session submissions. We also have our USFWC member meeting coming up on September 23rd. Maggie mentioned earlier the NCBA CLUSA Co-op Impact Conference coming up. towards the end of November or end of October? End of October, most of October. And then the Union Co-op Symposium is when?
November 12th and 13th. The 12th will be online, the 13th will be in Cincinnati.
Great.
Yeah, I'm leaving. It's really over.
Okay, well, I guess we can end a few minutes early if people want. That's fine.
So John, is the executive committee staying on to?
Yes, I would like the executive committee to stay on, and but other folks can jump off. Thank you so much. Again, thank you to Maggie, Danny, and Chloe for the presentation today. We look forward to a case study on cups. I think it's a really great story and one that needs to be shared. And I'll be trying to connect you with our cafe co-op that also started during the pandemic shutdown as well here in Olympia.
Yeah, I'll also just plug at unioncoops.org, you can click on the sign up link to get on the Union Co-ops listserv. I don't know if Chloe and Danny, if you're in on that, but that would be great for you to be on there, and we'll make sure either through that listserv or otherwise that you guys get the recording from today, because Danny, I think you did a really amazing job presenting that whole story.
Thanks for your notes. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, thank you for having us and let us, share our story.
I just want to say, if the idea of doing a case study usually means somebody has to do that. I will act as a point person. If somebody wants to work on it with my office, we can try and do that. I just want to make sure that the idea of case studies don't just hang out in limbo. Chloe and Danny, if you know other people working on it, it's a wonderful project for a college student who wants to explore this more, and I have access to some of them, but we can think about that. Ariana, you also may be a good.
We have a format for that, for the interviews, for the write-ups. We have a format now. So it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to invent the wheel.
I just have a thought, both what's being brought up with this case study and how, co-ops relate to broader unions and forming our own unions, and the statement in terms of co-op development. I think, often an organization or co-op developers can come in with blinders on that, not just that one shop like we're talking about, but even that one process of converting or creating startup new co-ops. And I think this opens the question of broader connection to social movements in general, right? And I think it's important for us to have a statement about the connection to the labor movement. But as we talk to other developers, as we train peer advisors here at the Federation in our clinic, that's just really important that people have that broader social movement vision when they're doing this work. So
absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Matt. Okay, well then I will wish everyone a wonderful weekend, and our next general meeting will be in October, I believe. Second Friday of October. So we will, I don't know if we have a presentation lined up yet, but we'll be looking for announcements. Please sign up to our listserv, and we will see you all in a couple of months, if not before.